Welcome back to 6.5 on the road from Las Vegas, covering Dell Technologies World 2024, the AI edition. I'm Lisa Martin with Dave Nicholson. Dave, what's been some of your favorite conversations we've had so far at the AI edition? Dell is in its Swifty AI era.
Honestly, my favorite conversation is going to be the next one we're about to have.
That wasn't even planned, ladies and gentlemen. We've got two guests here willing to give you a fantastic conversation. Brian Doty is here. Welcome, Brian, the Director of Product Management at Dell Technologies, and Phil T, the co-founder and chairman CEO of Moogsoft. Guys, welcome.
Great to be here.
Well, happy to have you. So, Phil, starting with you, Dell generated a lot of buzz a little less than a year ago with the acquisition of Moogsoft. We've learned a lot in the last 36 hours from Dell about Apex AIOps portfolio, which includes products like CloudIQ and Moogsoft, as well as Dell's new Application Observability product. Talk to us about what's transpired since that acquisition in less than a year's time, and what some of the new things are on the horizon for the portfolio.
You know, it's been a crazy busy 9 months, actually, it turns out. And you know, what we've been doing is busily pulling together both the Moogsoft technology and CloudIQ into what I think is going to be an incredible AIOps suite. And of course, joining the duo to make a trio is Instana as part of our Application Observability to give us full stack. So we can actually take you know, monitoring all the way from the LUN, if you like, the fundamental storage element, all the way through the application, cross-domain, and use AI at every step along the way to give unparalleled insights. I mean, it's super exciting. At Dell, we may be one of the very few companies out there with such a comprehensive AIOps suite. And this is just the beginning, right? This is our first act. And you know, where we're going to go with this, I think, is going to really knock people's socks off as we build a fully integrated portfolio and take that forward across the whole of the operations.
It sounds like it's good. It's already knocking people's socks off, I'm sure. Brian, you're a Dell OG, from what I understand.
25 years.
No.
Is that right?
Really?
Yeah.
Did you start when you were like
Since
4?
you were 3?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
It's child labor laws in Texas.
Child labor.
There you go.
But you've had the opportunity to see a tremendous amount of change and evolution of systems management of Dell's products. Talk to us about what you've seen and what the changes and the opportunities mean for Dell's customers, existing and future.
So much, right? I joined Dell in the late 90s. And when I joined Dell, you know, we had just made a foray into enterprise, right? Servers were a new thing. I remember still the first generation of Dell systems, right? The idea of remote management was non-existent back then. You know, the industry hadn't developed the technologies like we have with iDRAC today with our PowerEdge servers in order to allow customers to remotely manage systems and not have to walk into the data center. So much has changed, right? Data center is a hostile environment. I don't know if you've ever been in one, but it's not a good place to be. But you know, take that kind of as a starting point. Now we're talking about bringing together all of Dell infrastructure and fleet-based management. We have a product today called Apex AIOps, previously called CloudIQ, which has the capability to monitor and report on virtually everything, every Dell enterprise asset under a customer's control. And not only can we monitor and report on that, but we can provide insights to customers. We can tell them why the failures are occurring. We monitor performance of systems so people can understand. And actually, as Phil pointed out, bringing together the Instana application performance monitoring, as well as the capabilities in Moogsoft to get to the bottom of what's causing the issues. But it's a stark contrast, what we have today and what I had when I joined.
I can't even imagine.
So just to be clear, when I was young, data centers were something we called caves. And the data was cave paintings on the walls. So yeah, we've been in data centers before. But I want to dive in a little on this.
It's a lot of similarities.
It's very easy to say that AI is infusing all of these things. Is a lot of that taking the form of natural language processing in terms of enabling the operator to query the system? So you see something go wrong, and instead of having to go through and parse all sorts of logs yourself, the ability to say, has this ever happened before? Or something maybe not that simplistic, but is that when you talk about AI helpers in that regard? Or give me an example of how AI is enhancing this.
You know, I can give you a bunch of examples. I mean, it turns out there's well over 150 patents in what we announced today. So, and we've been at this for quite a while. I mean, we've been applying AI to the IT operations problem for 16 plus years. Now, let me give you two. So the first example is you get a lot of alerts. And when I say a lot, I mean I'm talking billions of data points can come into one of our systems, and it's kind of like finding a needle in a haystack of haystacks, and you need to be able to sort of narrow that down. Now, if you try and do that as a human being unassisted, or even write a lot of rules that model the behavior of what you're trying to do, it's extraordinarily difficult to get there. We can use some very clever machine learning technology to understand the patterns that the eye wouldn't see to be able to find that needle in the haystack, and we do it incredibly efficiently inside of the incident management part of the portfolio. That's one example. Another example is, at Dell, it's been around even longer than Brian, right? I mean, you have to remember this is a 40-year-old company. And so there is, something in the region of 180,000 written knowledge articles inside of Dell, which describe everything from, how do I get this, this server to reboot, or, how do I extend a, logical partition in a particular storage device? It's a wealth of knowledge. And what we can do by using generative AI, of course, very much the darling of the moment as a technique, is give people the ability to query that knowledge base without having to be the expert that knew everything in there. So you can be sort of elevated to the level of a super god of infrastructure by asking simple questions like, how do I perform this automation or this task, and it will give you the answer back in a concise form. So that's just two examples, but there are many, many, many more.
Yeah, and just to jump on the back of what Phil was talking about, when we had our first meeting post-acquisition, Phil said something that really struck me, and he says it's about humanizing IT operations, right? And I think about that too, especially with your example of the AIOps assistant or Gen AI capability. There's tens of thousands of knowledge base articles. There are dozens or hundreds of Dell security advisories, right? And when we publish these, back in the day, I thought, again, going back to when I joined, publish all these articles, we assume customers read them. Well, they don't, right? But if you had an assistant where you could ask a question, or even as what we do today with AIOps, the observability, infrastructure observability capabilities, we curate those articles. You don't have to read 100 or 1,000. Here's the one that is relevant to you, right? So bringing the right information to the customers at the right time. So that's why I like the term humanization of IT operations.
Now, I want to pile on your pylon. Of course. We heard in Jeff Clark's keynote today about the 27 followed by 30 zeros.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, it is crazy, crazy, crazy how much scale we are talking about this new AI revolution is going to create. And to manage that, if AI didn't exist, we'd have to invent it, because it's gone way beyond the scope that human beings have to be able to comprehend information. You just can't do it. So, you've got to have these techniques, or you will just drown in the complexity of the infrastructures that we're deploying today.
Are operators, for lack of a better term, going to need to have the same level of computer science background in the future that they have needed in the past? You've heard reference to Jensen Huang, NVIDIA, being interviewed, and his counsel to someone going into college is, maybe the whole STEM thing doesn't have the allure that it used to. Do you have any thoughts on that? You talk about humanizing these operations, humanizing IT. Does that mean that the French literature major might actually be better suited for those kinds of things because their mind is working in terms of language? And if we can increasingly communicate with these systems with human language, then a facility with human language becomes more important than the computer side of things. Is there a risk? First, do you see it going in that direction? Second, is there a risk that our computer science muscles atrophy and we become sort of slave to the machine?
Yeah. Gosh, that's a really big question. And you
have 30 seconds.
In some regards, what he said was both profoundly stupid and profoundly insightful. If we allow our muscles of problem solving, deep tech expertise, You know, at the end of the day, Jeff was on stage wearing a "It's Only Math"
Only math.
t-shirt. Like, if we don't teach our kids the ability to comprehend the underlying, underpinning foundations of this, we're toast. Because eventually we'll build an Antikythera machine so complicated nobody will know how to maintain or propagate it. On the other hand, I think maybe where it was coming from.
This is where we pause and we explain to the audience not familiar with the device found under the sea.
The Antikythera, exactly.
The
people, you know,
Yes.
it's a rich source of science fiction.
Look it up, folks.
Yeah, it's a rich source of science
I'm sorry,
fiction.
I digress. Go ahead. Please continue.
On the other hand, it's all good. On the other hand, you know, maybe the point that he's making is, you know, we all become knowledge workers in the world of Gen AI, right? We don't need 20 years of experience in, you know, how to string together, you know, the right incantation to get the computer to do what it is that you want to do. So the what and the why and becomes much more important than the how. So you take language skills. I know of one startup, Alfie.ai, and what they're doing is they are language skill people that are understanding how to look for insensitive language in an email or potentially dangerously litigious language in an email. And their background, you know, they are language majors. They understand language and they understand DEI. Now, you know, look, I've worked amongst a lot of really bright engineers, but that is not a skill that I've come across a lot in the lab. So
Interesting.
So we can weaponize that skill if weaponize is
In a
probably the
positive
wrong
way.
word.
Yeah. Sure. Any thoughts on my rant?
No, that's a good question. I mean, I don't think it. I agree with Phil. It doesn't fundamentally change what the IT professionals are doing. It's just that they're not as busy in the minutia. In fact, when I talk to IT pros a lot, I've worked in systems management virtually my entire career. They want to free themselves up to work on more important things, right? And so, yeah, I don't think it. You know, it certainly changes things. And I don't know. This may be too long of an example, but I have some friends who work in Seattle and they do film. And I remember talking to one of them over lunch. Different world entirely, right? That when the day they realized their job would change forever. And it was when a certain electronics manufacturer had created a DLR camera that could actually do all the post-processing. And so, and he was a sound and lights person, and his job changed. It completely it didn't make his job irrelevant, but all of a sudden now they didn't need these huge, you know, groups of folks setting up stages for film and video, right? So, but you know, he still, it's a, you know, he leverages skills in different aspects of film, right? So I think it's sort of the same inflection point. It's just remaining relevant and in a different way.
Don't you think there are some kind of almost very profound ethical problems here? I mean, you will have caught recently Scarlett Johansson getting quite upset about the fact that ChatGPT 4.0 appears to have a voice that sounds uncomfortably like Scarlett Johansson. So there is a way of leading your life that may disappear. Maybe AI replaces celebrities, right? I mean, do we really need a Scarlett Johansson if you can recreate one using ChatGPT? It'd be a lot cheaper.
It would be.
You know, and you could have whatever scandals you want to have to order, right, to keep the fans enthralled.
I think that's already happening. Actually, isn't there like an
there
Instagram star or something like that?
There are
That's an AI.
influencers that aren't real.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
It is fascinating. Yeah, I guess the answer would depend upon whether or not you make your living as a celebrity. And I think Scarlett Johansson would say, "Ooh, it's fascinating that they are actually licensing their personas so that they can be leveraged that way in a way." But yeah,
people will find ways to monetize, you know, everything. But I do think it's kind of an interesting parlor game to play. Maybe, you know, which professions are going to be most impacted. And I sometimes talk about this. I mean, we were just at an AI conference last week and saying there's a lot of the talk track would lead you to believe that this is a kind of a bosses versus the workers thing, right? So, you know, AI is going to kind of automate away, you know, the humble, you know, sons of the soil, as it were, or daughters of the soil, you know, writing code in sort of sweatshop factories, you know, in sort of, you know, big software companies like Microsoft or whatever. You know, if AI can drive a car, well, it can run a company, can't it? So maybe it's actually the middle and the upper levels. We all get watched over by machines of loving grace, to quote Ayn Rand, you know, and you start working in companies that are run by AI. How about that for a thought?
Interesting perspectives. Brian, take us out here. What are some of your thoughts on the AI revolution? You talked about being at Dell Technologies for a very long time, what you've seen now, just even some of the potentials that Phil alluded to. What
Yeah.
excites you about where Dell and its ecosystem is going?
Well, it's forcing us to rethink everything, right? So, being in product management, I do react to what customers want in the here and now, and we have to make time for that. But I spend most of my time thinking about, okay, what's next gen, right? What does management look like in 5 years or 10 years? Because that's the journey we have to start right now. And so that's a challenging question. It's certainly Dell has a lot of capabilities that use AI in its Apex AIOps suite. But how does a customer interact with that system? Is it still a UI? Right? Do you need a UI anymore in 5 years? Right? Is it completely run by an AI, and then it provides you custom built on the fly dashboards to show you what you need to know, like what actions a human may have to take, right? But I think it's really interesting is back in, I think it was 2021, we had an interesting show, and we had several industry pundits on, and it was called Autonomous Operations. And there was a lot of reactions to that. A lot of folks who were reacting to it said, "Oh, this is impossible. This is science fiction." And it's only been a few years now where they still think it's science fiction. And so I think what's really exciting is not so much just the insights we can give to customers, but having the machines act on those insights, right? So, taking the full action, the complete autonomy.
Yeah, with the little time we have, I do want to double click on that because it's interesting. I think that if people understood the autonomous operations that are occurring in their lives every day, they wouldn't be so skeptical. We get used to pushing our foot on an accelerator in a vehicle, whether it's electric or internal combustion, and it goes forward. But everything happening in between is extremely complex and orchestrated, and we just get used to it working all of the time. Building out data center infrastructure and sort of leading edge of IT is arguably not necessarily more complex, but it's often more bespoke, and it can't be as standardized. But to the extent that we can standardize it, absolutely, automation is going to happen.
I agree. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think there's a sort of a zooming out feature of this, if you will. So at some degree, all complexity, all variation becomes homogeneous. And maybe the big thing that generative AI and AI in general will give us is the ability to create solutions that are generic for things that underneath the covers are very, very complex. And that could be hugely empowering.
Wow, we have to have you guys back because I feel like we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, this is meant to be a 3-hour podcast.
With the amazing conversations.
We're sorry. Let me apologize that we just can't.
Phil and Brian, thank you so much for joining us and really just piquing our interest with what's going on. The potential, it's the horizon to me is so exciting.
Totally.
So
Likewise.
we'll have to have you guys back. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
For our guests and for Dave Nicholson, I'm Lisa Martin. You're watching 6.5 on the Road, covering Dell Technologies World 2024. One more guest joins us, and 2 more guests join us last, so stick around.